We do have some things that we purchase group wide, and I'd say non-negotiables. It's if we're buying anything at a group level, like price is just the first thing we look at, because for the particular slots that we may purchase something for that would be used at multiple restaurants, it's going to be something that we know will move at volume. And the reason we're buying it as a group versus buying it as one restaurant is because we see an opportunity to provide more to our guests, more generosity, because we're buying so much of it that the price can come down, which is the only legal way for that to happen in New York. And because everything is posted publicly, that the only way you get a discount is through volume. There's no backdoor deals or, give you a little bit of this for that. It's not the wild, wild west. So that's really the number one thing.
Welcome to Masterclass U.S. Wine Market with me, Barbara Fitzgerald. In this show, we'll break down the complexities of selling wine in the U.S. by discussing the relevant issues of today with experts from around the globe. Each episode serves up 3 key insights to help elevate your winery's presence in the U.S. market. So grab a pen and paper and let's pave the way for your success in the U.S.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Masterclass U.S. Wine Market. Today, I am very excited to welcome Vincent Morrow, Master Sommelier, to the show. Vincent is the Wine and Beverage Director at the Union Square Hospitality Group in New York. So, Vincent, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's a good way to spend a Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I feel like I'm in excellent company. So before we dive into our chat today, though, Vincent, can you tell us a little bit more just about your background and how you ended up working in wine?
Sure, absolutely. So I'd say New York is probably one of the last places I thought I'd end up. And I mean that in the best way possible, but also from this point of intimidation. Because I grew up in Arizona. I always thought I'd be a soccer player my entire life. And I found my way to California by way of essentially, I got a scholarship to play soccer at Sonoma State University, about an hour north of San Francisco. But through one thread or another, was supposed to go play soccer in Alabama. So you imagine would have been a very different world had I done that. And was playing in Sonoma State, and my mom was and is my biggest fan, and she would come to watch the games a few times a year, and she started going wine tasting, and that was sort of the first seed that was planted. And I was the DD because I wanted to spend time with mom. And eventually, just by proxy, it was what is this beverage? All these people are older than me. They're talking about things that are way more interesting, and it was kind of like seeing ahead of where you could maybe be in life. And certainly didn't decide then and there that, nor did I know what a sommelier was. But the interest was picked. And I said, okay, well, following a business degree, and I'm already in an area where this is a thing. So what could it hurt to get a business degree and to focus on wine or focus on the wine business? And that was really as far as I thought it through. And I feel like that's been a theme in my life of, maybe you think 10 or 20 years out, but you're really just focused on sort of the next 6 to 18 months. And that's really how my career progressed from 2007, 2008 until now, almost 20 years later. That's how it really has grown and evolved.
That's amazing. And did you take classes at the Wine Business Institute at Sonoma State?
I did not. It's a much different program today, and a vastly improved program today than what it is. I mean, when I took it, it was in no shade because they were trying just as hard as we were, but it was business professors learning and teaching about wine through the lens of their expertise. So supply chain and logistics or marketing in the sense that, how they knew it and then weaving in wine into it. And to their credit, I would say I didn't turn 21 until I finished the program. So it was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was wasted on me, but I wasn't able to participate to the fullest extent emotionally and from a maturation standpoint. But then, all that education that came in person afterwards, it put me in the right place to do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did the degree and eventually found my way into working in tasting rooms. And from there is when I learned what a sommelier was, and that there was this whole other world where you could put a suit on and be on a restaurant floor and help people find wine from around the world based on their preferences rather than through the narrow scope of one producer, albeit the producers I did work for had done some incredible things in the wine world. That was the journey. So from there, it was tasting room to working a harvest to working in that tasting room in Napa, where there was a chef who was a certified sommelier who really like inspired me even more. And then it was a wine bar, and then it was a restaurant, and then it was more restaurants, and it just that snowball kept growing.
Yeah, the evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you have found your way to Union Square Hospitality Group. And for those who don't know, can you let us know which restaurants are part of the group in New York?
Wow, it's quite a bit. So Union Square Hospitality Group is 41 years young. The flagship or the original is Union Square Cafe, which is not in its original location. It's been in its new location for about 11 years now. Gramercy Tavern would be the next oldest. They're right across the street on 20th. So they're celebrating 32 years. By Matt, this will be the 32nd year of operation. The Modern is in its 21st year of operation. And then our youngest, if you will, are Manhattan and Chisiamo down in Midtown and Hudson Yards, respectively. The View just opened last year, so it's in its sophomore year of operation. I call them wine-centric, or restaurants that have large wine programs, whereas we also have a bar concept called Porchlight. We have an outdoor seasonal taco and margarita concept called Tacocina in Brooklyn. We have several openings coming up. We'll be opening in Detroit in about 6 weeks. We open in Boston
So
in about 3
exciting.
months. And then we have a whole line of quick service restaurants called Daily Provisions, which we now have, I believe. Those open much more quickly, and those are expanding at a much more rapid clip than the full service restaurants. But I think we'll be surpassing 20 probably by the end of this year. Daily Provisions, or early next year, we'll be close. So
That's really exciting.
yeah, I came in right as this really started to take off, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of exciting things coming in the next 18 months.
That's really great because it's a difficult environment for wine businesses right now, a difficult environment for restaurant businesses. So you are directing the wine program at some of New York's really most iconic establishments. So which gives you really great insight into how to navigate this challenging on-premise market. So keeping that in mind, our 3 key takeaways for this episode and what we're really excited to talk to you about, Vincent, are number 1, rebuilding wine's relevance through the guest experience. So we talk all the time, meet the consumer where they are. How can we understand what's happening on the restaurant floor to better understand the opportunities we have to connect with our consumers? Number 2, how you make buying decisions for the Union Square Hospitality Group. What drives placement in the various restaurants? And then number 3, designing a wine program that works in today's restaurant reality. So tough economy, we still have to balance margin, movement, and what the guest wants. So we're really excited to chat with you about these things today. Let's dig right in.
Yeah.
So in your restaurants, where do you see guests kind of hesitating with wine at the moment? Like, what is the friction point for them?
It's some of the things that might seem and feel obvious that maybe we take for granted. When someone opens, it could be physical friction. How are you placing things? What's your menu mix look like? Even down to just, do you have a nice, clean, like bar book or wine by the glass book or wine book and menus and things that are just easy to read and easy to follow relative to the concepts that you have? That I think that just comes with experience and with nuance, but also not overthinking it. An example I'll provide is one of our concepts, Chisiamo, is like full-on Italian. It has some French skews, namely champagne. It has a little bit of domestic, but it's 85% Italian wine. And we had a Sangiovese from Tuscany that we weren't listing on the menu as Sangiovese. We just listed as Toscana Rosso. I think maybe in that moment, it felt a little like too overcomplicated. Like, why don't we just call it Sangiovese? Because that, then you don't have to go through what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And while to us that may seem like an opportunity to have a conversation, think to the guest in a restaurant that does 400 or 500 covers for dinner and has outdoor seating and a private dining room, and it's next to Madison Square Garden, and they've got to be at the Sabrina Carpenter concert in an hour. They don't care. Or if they do, they just don't have the time. So I think finding that right balance between what is just the right distilled amount of information to give a guest that removes any unnecessary friction, but still invites that storytelling experience if a guest is interested in that. And that's in every restaurant will have a different line for where that is, right? I think that's one of the like easy ones that sticks out of like, are we just making this as easy as possible for people to say yes?
Yeah.
Great, I'll have another. Or I'm looking at this by the glass list or this cocktail list and I'm already planning what two I'm going to have. So let me get the first one started. And then I'm so excited because I can't wait for the next one. But if we're not creating that energy in the beginning, it can be hard to win back, right? So I think there's that. I think then you get into the financial piece of it is, what does your product mix look like? And especially in today's economy, are you being generous to your guests, or are you, sort of letting the world of costs and wine and the way the economy is kind of run your program, and all of a sudden you don't have a wine by the glass under $20 and someone says, I'll have a beer, I'll have a cocktail, or just feels like everyone's already being stretched. So I think more than anything else, it's an opportunity to be generous.
Yeah. You just made me think of an article that Karen McNeil wrote, a little bit of a hot take question I'm asking you, but she wrote an article about how Coravin is killing the on-premise industry, because now you go to restaurants and restaurants have like an entire list of wine by the glass that's like $50 a glass, $75 a glass, $100 a glass. And they are lacking in the choices of like $12 a glass, $14 a glass. Do you see this playing out? Do you see people really becoming fearful of those, even though they're very special, those just high price tags?
I think it goes back to having balance and understanding who your clientele are. And, believe me, I get that you can't be everything to everybody, but it's just asking yourself the question of, just because you can, does it mean you should? And look, we have a 2 Michelin star Grand Award restaurant where you can pour wines like that. But we also have $16, $17 wines by the glass, and we have $25 wines by the glass. And then we have the option to, we have a reserve pairing on that tasting menu, and we can certainly offer, you can pour those wines by the glass too, if someone would like that. I think what's also kind of segues into something else that we see, namely at the Modern and even some of our other restaurants like Gramercy Tavern, also a Michelin star, very large wine lists, or Manhattan down in Midtown, where someone might just want one glass of wine, but they're willing to spend money on that glass of wine. So it's capturing that without losing sight of, what is the bread and butter that actually keeps you in business, because the $80 Burgundy is probably by the glass is probably not, but you also don't want to lose that. So I think it's just listening to making sure you're being true to yourself and your business and who's supporting it, and not being so far extreme one way or the other.
Yeah. This should be the name of this show, actually, is Know Your Customer. That's like
Yeah,
the
I mean,
response to 65% of the questions I ask.
yeah, there's several like prongs within that, right? I think
Yeah.
it's knowing your business and who your guests are and how your beverage program supports them, both selection and financially. And then also, who are the people that are on the floor in front of your guests, and how are they extending that? Because you as a wine director can make all the moves in the world, but you can't get in front of every table. And I think that's a little bit of a shift that I saw, and we're still, seeing sort of post-pandemic of the sort of knowledge transfer, and that's a big focus for us. So I think, yes, if you're going to have wines like that on your list and have, a great Corvin program, more power to you by all means. But just make sure they're not gathering dust, and you're getting people excited about it, and have
Yeah.
something for the people that maybe don't want that, and don't only have those selections. That's as high as I'll climb on the horse for that one.
So when we talk about young consumers especially, but new consumers coming into the category are wanting very different things out of wine, are entering the category differently, et cetera. Is there anything that you find within your team about how they talk about wine that has been really successful to meet these newer consumers, to get them excited, maybe even to shift them from ordering a cocktail to ordering wine by the glass?
Honestly, not particularly. I think we're just focused on, well, at least it hasn't changed, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
We're not shifting a whole new way of talking about wine. It's really like keeping it simple, and keep it so that people can understand what you're talking about. I mean, I'd imagine that's a theme or an answer you've heard.
Yeah.
Just be relatable, and don't make the language inadvertently feel like it's gatekeeping, or people like, I'll just have a cocktail because I know what Johnny Walker is and I know what Chinar is, and I generally like that anyway. And because those things don't change. The only thing that changes how you mix it, what's the variable behind it. But wine being so different, a Sangiovese here versus that is gonna be very different. That's a separate art and skill that your team of servers or bartenders or any of what you'd say your sales drivers, like those are people that should be able to, you have to communicate it to them so that they can then communicate it to the guest. And then as you get good at it, you can tailor how the types of words, intonations, how you shape whatever analogies you might come up with that make sense for one table that don't for another. And that's hard to do in a short interaction. So the more you can empower that's at the server level, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've spent a little time on both sides of the coin. I mean, you're in the restaurant world now, but you've mentioned that you work for wineries and tasting rooms.
Oh, yeah.
If you could give wineries one piece of advice to really help them succeed today in on-premise, what would it be?
Well, what we've seen, it kind of started to see the shift when I was on the West Coast, and especially in the past 16 months here in New York, that even producers who have been in it for 20, 30 years and they're killing it, and I'll use California as an example, seeing some of the ones that I love and respect so much, sense where the market is and where people are, and not just, okay, need to add 10% to everything year over year because that's the way the world is, at least picking like one SKU that can be your foot in the door. Like even if you take a hit on the end of vintage on something and you got your next vintage coming behind it, which is happened I think for a lot of people, like offer, and not just like $1 a bottle concession, like do something intentional that is, especially if it lands by the glass or on a pairing, that's going to put that in front of so many more guests much more quickly with a person behind it to speak on behalf of the winery versus if a case on a bottle list that is one amongst hundreds just has such a slower sort of seepage rate out into the market, right? And you need to spread it to a lot of places for it to make that same impact. So not saying it's easy, and I certainly, I don't own a winery and don't have any desire to, but I've seen that work well for brands that, whether they see the market slipping a little bit or maybe just being very proactive. I've thought that's a very intelligent move, albeit I'm sure it hurts the wallet in terms of what you could gain, right? If you sold all of that at a buy the bottle frontline price instead of took a hit on 50 cases at a buy the glass price.
Yeah. It's a little bit of like forward investment, right? Like take the hit now for the longer term relationship, the longer term brand equity.
Right. And smart, I say smart because there's plenty of smart people that don't do it. But thinking about a generation or two generations from now and longevity versus, and balancing that with, well, I've got to do what I got to do to stay in business. That's hard because it's also, there's art and there's passion in it. And how do you monetize that? I've seen some things of what not to do, and I'll use California as an example again. Brands that even working there for 15 years had never heard of, and the wines were perfectly fine. Like they're good, they're perfectly fine, and they are more expensive, and not just by a little bit, but by a lot than some of the staples, like people that just are beloved across the industry. It was a Chardonnay Pinot producer, had been in the business for, I think, 7 vintages, and it was more expensive than Seritas, than Literai, than Rain, than a whole host of like tremendous producers. And I get it that it's, if you started 30 years ago versus 10 years ago, it's a different type of P&L. But I think that needs to be in the business plan when you decide to start it, of your comp set and seeing what others are charging and thinking you'd see this when I was in Napa too, when a new winery starts and your on release price first vintage is $300. Why? Tell me why. That other than the finances that we should add that just because it's $300 and so person made it. It's so avoiding that, I should say.
Yeah. Sounds like you're saying you kind of have to earn premium pricing a little bit. You can't just jump out of the gate and be the premium.
Yeah, be relative to whichever region you're in. Even if so-and-so made your wine and so helped you in the vineyard, that accounts for something, maybe a foot in the door, but it doesn't, to a guest that might not know any different, or when you're in a sea of competition, that might be the foot in the door, but it's not always it doesn't seal the deal per se. And I think maybe putting a little bit too much cachet on that and not focusing on the things that we find guests really attached to, like an authentic, genuine story. I think that's something not to do, or the flip side of it is you can pay attention to that, and you should do that as a new winery or a brand that's looking for ways in.
That's great advice. Well, let's shift a little bit now to talking about how buying decisions are made. So, when you're evaluating whether or not, to bring a new wine into your own portfolio, what are some of the non-negotiables?
Non-negotiables. Well, I'll preface it with, in my role, I don't do a ton of buying per se. It's more support and strategy and helping our directors and restaurants be the best possible beverage programs that they can be and they want to be. And then there is some buying support that kind of happens to then support what they want to do. We do have some things that we purchase group wide, and I'd say non-negotiables. I mean, it's if we're buying anything at a group level, like price is just the first thing we look at, because for the particular slots that we may purchase something for that would be used at multiple restaurants, it's going to be something that we know will move at volume. And the reason we're buying it as a group versus buying it as one restaurant is because A, we see an opportunity to provide more to our guests, more generosity, because we're buying so much of it that the price can come down, which is the only legal way for that to happen in New York. And because everything is posted publicly, that the only way you get a discount is through volume. There's no like, oh, backdoor deals or, I'll give you a little bit of this for that. It's not the wild, wild west. So that's really the number one thing. I think it also needs to fit really one of those slots that we're looking at. Great examples are, Champagne, Sancerre, Chablis, domestic Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, domestic Cabernet, things like that, Barolo, Barbaresco, Chianti. There's a theme to all of these, and they are things that are recognized by most guests. I would say they'd have at least heard of it or know what it is. Whether or not they are geeking out on it, they know what those things are in a way that someone has their favorite gin for a certain martini and they'll just order that. You see some slots that behave, or some regions that behave a little bit the same way. Like Sancerre just has this wild price elasticity, I say, in Sauvignon Blanc to an extent that maybe Ribolla Jallet just doesn't. It's hard. We just won't even taste those things for a group-wide level because we don't want to give any false promises. That's not something we're looking for that we see a major opportunity in. But our Italian concept, if they had Ribolla Jallet by the glass, could be perfectly successful in it, but it just wouldn't be a group-wide commitment for us.
Right. So there's the opportunity to work with you as an individual restaurant and then also as a larger group.
Exactly. I'd say that's probably one of the commonly misconstrued things is I'll get a lot of inbound activity for, you want to buy this for USHG, or here's an allocation or an offer. And I just say, I'll send, the buyers do all the buying for the restaurants. I support them. I'll pass it along. But tasting individual producers or individual things is pretty rare for me, unless I already have something in mind or an opportunity in mind for the group.
So I would assume that another non-negotiable for working with the larger group is volume. Like you can't only have a few cases to sell of something. That's probably better left to the single restaurant.
Yeah, great point. And it was something that's obvious sitting in plain sight is, I mean, we can go through hundreds of cases of something in a year, no problem if it's the right slot. Price point poured at enough restaurants. That's it's pretty cool, but it's the first time I've really had to think about volume at the scale that we do in terms of when tasting wine. It's like if it can only be 50 cases, I might just direct it to one or two places and say, hey, would you guys like to use this? Because we do it at a group level, everyone will get to order 5 cases and then it's gone.
Yeah. So if a producer wants to break into a group like yours, whether on the individual restaurant level or the group level, what should they be focusing on?
Well, I think working in is kind of a redirect, but I'd say work through the distributor. Certainly you can build a relationship grassroots at different restaurants on your own, but then have all the ducks in a row. Who does it come from? What's it priced at? I think there's many just cold emails we'll get of, I'm so-and-so from some producer somewhere. That's it. Can we meet to taste? And that's it. There's just no information behind it in a world where it just emails are hundreds of emails a day. Teams messages and texts and calls and meetings, and then being in service, capturing that moment and that it distill it down and, give that elevator pitch, but give all the sort of necessary things. And then I'd say at an individual level, make sure you have the right distributor for you, targeting or putting it in places that make the most sense. And if that happens to be one of our restaurants, then great. But, we don't have Portuguese and Spanish wine at Union Square Cafe. So if you haven't done the homework to know that it just says you're not spending the time it signals to someone else, why would they then invest that time to learn about your brand if you haven't done that? And that's like, it's a two-way street and it should be balanced. But I think that's the first step, is just do the homework, look at the list, look at the concepts and the history, have a good distributor that you've invested your time in that makes sense. Because when those things are mismatched, it's a bummer.
I think that's really, really solid advice, because this is relationship building, right? It's like if you were
100%.
dating somebody and you called them by the wrong name, they would probably be like, okay, I'm done with
Oh, yeah.
this.
I think the number one I get is Victor. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's autocorrect or, but I get that a lot. And it's like, okay, glad we're paying attention.
Yeah.
Don't take it personal. Everyone's busy, but we place a lot of emphasis and care into, Danny calls it the virtuous cycle of enlightened hospitality. We take care of ourselves and our team members first, and then we take care of our guests, and then we take care of our community, and then our vendors, and then our investors, right? So even someone's name is important, and yeah, mistakes happen, but yeah, just taking that, we're in the hospitality business. We place an emphasis on taking care of everyone else. So it feels good when people notice and they pay attention and didn't just write the sales pitch through ChatGPT, which I've definitely gotten those. Don't do that. That's another good one. Don't write it just through that. So.
This is your message is really reinforced. The last interview I did was with Philana Bouvier, the president of Dominion.
Oh, Philana. Hi, Philana.
Yeah.
I have to listen to the episode.
She said the same thing. She said, even as a distributor, as a salesperson, you're in hospitality. You are there to take care of your customer, who is the buyer, who is the restaurant. Make them feel good, make them feel supported. They're busy. Their jobs are hard right now. So how can you, as the person selling the wine, support the person that you want to buy it? I thought that you said something very similar. I think this is great advice.
Yeah, I mean, Danny says just work hard and be nice, and yeah, he says, and it's just that simple, and it's just that hard, and it is. So it's not a high horse or anything, but if you want sort of the other side of it, the view, like that's what it is.
Yeah. Maybe a question kind of along the similar path that we're tugging on right now, but is there anything that distributors or importers are doing right now that either make your job easier or maybe harder?
Sure. I mean, there's always this or that. I'll give you a great example of one particular small portfolio where guy is just so clearly passionate about his producers, and he's met them kind of as osmosis when he goes to visit them where they are, and then he'll meet the friends, and it feels like it's not in a rush, that it's all organic and how the portfolio's grown, and there's a similar thread in terms of the wines and the ethos. And so it was, was curious enough to say, okay, well, let's meet to taste, and we'll bring some of the sommeliers in to do it. I felt so bad. The whole day was running behind, so his hour turned into 25 minutes, and he took 9 people through probably 14 wines in a small window without missing a beat, and it felt like, wow, he's on it. It doesn't feel salesy. It doesn't feel too fast, but he's working the room. And it felt like, when you're a som and you have to do a pairing for a large party and manage other just like when you're on it, that only comes from caring about the wines and the producers. That really doesn't come from anywhere else. Even if you're super knowledgeable, but you don't care, that only comes from caring, but also having the skill set, and he had it in spades. And I thought that was really, just that moment was we've worked much more with him since, and now we're doing a tasting with the whole group with his wines.
Awesome.
Versus just a tasting for one of the restaurants.
Yeah.
One thing that stinks for us is, or not so great thing, is there's one company where administratively, there's a couple of larger companies in New York that administratively are just a huge headache. There's in New York, there's something called a bill and hold, and this is Uber specific, so mind you, but if a company can post call it a 50 case price, if you buy one case, it's $20 a bottle, but if you buy 50 cases, it's $8 a bottle. But how many restaurants can fit 50 cases in their storage? Very few. So there's something in New York called a bill and hold, where you can pay for the inventory up front, and then monthly you will get a storage fee, a few cents a bottle on those wines, and you can have them deliver 3, 5, 10 cases at a time. But only the companies that have their stuff together administratively from an accounting and logistics perspective really succeed at it. When they don't, it really hurts, and it makes it really I never want to do this again.
Yeah.
So not necessarily through bill and hold, but make sure like have good people in each of those areas. If you're going to partner with a shipping or logistics company to fulfill your deliveries, make sure you do your homework, and then make sure have a good accounting team and logistics team and reps behind it. Otherwise, any link in that chain, it can really make life kind of stink, both for buyers as well as for themselves. And it makes us not want to do those deals with those companies when it's like that. And it's no fault of the sales rep. It's just the way the companies are structured. So how your own internal management as a distributor or a supplier can impact how buyers think about, regardless of how good the wine is, can make them think twice about having a relationship with you.
Yeah, thinking about that user experience from the other end, like is everything seamless for the user?
This is totally not wine related, but when I lived in San Francisco, during the tech boom pre-pandemic, I remember when Concur, people would have billboards of Concur solutions and saying faster than submitting an expense through Concur, right at the edge of where the 101 and the 210,
280.
280, thank you.
You're
right.
welcome.
It's always a bottleneck. Every hour of every day, it's a bottleneck. And I was like, that billboard is real estate gold. Concur has got to figure it out. Everyone, I'm sure everyone that saw it was like, yep, that's like exactly right.
I love it.
So don't be that company in terms of logistics and user experience.
Yeah. I'm a San Francisco native, so we could talk about San Francisco locations all day long, but
love it. But it's, every city has their quirks.
Okay, let's shift on to the third takeaway now, which is just the economics of a modern wine list. So, in response to today's operating environment, and when I say today, really kind of post-COVID, how has your approach to building wine lists evolved in response to this? And, are you thinking differently about how much inventory to carry or depth versus breadth, things like that?
Yes, all the above. We as a group have specifically, and it's not new for us, but just doubled down on being generous and making sure that we have enough, not even because enough feels like it's tolerable, but making sure we are like bountiful options at price points that are still accessible. Each of our programs I put it through the lens of how many SKUs do we have below $80? How many SKUs below 150? How many SKUs below 200? It also helps make those conversations easier when you're looking at it from an objective data point versus, hey, just personally, I think you don't have enough wines under $100. So can you fix that? It's, hey, look, you have 2,000 unique selections and 5 under $100. But when we look at the data of our sales, 20% of our buy the bottle selections are sold under $100, or those are fake figures, but it illustrates the point of why would we not provide an appropriate amount of options at different price points so that as things continue to get more expensive, guests still say, man, I can go to the Modern and I can drink a great $60 bottle of wine and feel like a king in a castle and get taken care of. And, it's all good. Whereas, certainly, I just went back to California for a few days 2 weekends ago, and even dining around the city, you see people that get it, and the places that everybody talks about. I'll just put it, Pennies, the Claudes, the Naritas of the world, where people are like, holy crap, I don't know what to drink because it all looks so good. We want to have that feeling in all of the restaurants. Just this wonderment of you're already thinking about bottle 2 and bottle 3 with your 6 top or 4 top or whatever your consumption levels are. You're already thinking about that. To me, I love that fun, giddy feeling where you just get excited looking at the list. So we want that. So that reflects in our by the glass selections, that reflects in our cocktails, that reflects in our beers. We made a huge push in our non-alcoholic last summer to not only better the selections and bring them up to the standard that we hold everything else up to, but also we just said, why do we need to make huge cogs on non-alcoholic wine or beer? Let's just make it make it $8. Like, why does it have to be 15? And myself, I go have a business lunch, I'm not drinking wine. Like, no chance. I may have to work until I start the day at 8 or 9. I may work till 8, 9, 10 p.m. Like, why would I have a glass in the middle of the day? It's really nice when there's a great NA cocktail, or interesting NA wine, or anything on a menu at another restaurant that can have something different. That, because I don't drink soda. I'll just drink sparkling water, and that's kind of it. So it's an opportunity for that segment to feel seen, and for you to also earn more revenue as a business versus an iced tea or a Coke. So I think it goes back to the point of using wine as an example. Like, it's very easy for you to pick a lot of great stuff and have all your wines be $22 to $45 a glass. But it's important to us that we have glasses of wine that feel accessible, and that you don't have this complete lopsided where you have an $18 glass and everything else is above 30. Like, we want a nice progression, and we want to make sure we have slots that people recognize, and then have a little bit adventurous stuff for people that are curious, and kind of everything in between.
Yeah, I love you're just like very thoughtful and intentional about building this, and not just only driven by the numbers, which are important but not everything.
Yeah, it's like the art and the science, and
Yeah,
I'm very interested in both.
that's why you're in wine.
And each of the directors has their thing, and every sommelier has their thing, and definitely some people that lean more artistic, and others that lean more of the science, or the
Hmm.
math behind it. And we try to, like, we want all of our restaurants to feel like one of one. At the same time, each of them has their you said non-negotiables earlier. We
Hmm.
just have some non-negotiables that need to be hit,
Yeah.
um, each restaurant. And then what selection you put in that slot is up to you, but it needs to fit. It needs to be a X. You go pick it. You find the best one you can, but it needs to do this. Yeah. So it seems like it's working so far.
That's great. What are you seeing as the biggest disconnect between what producers think matters and what actually sells in restaurants?
Mm. I mean, I probably experienced more of this on the West Coast, with points from a critic, or not to say that critics and media don't matter, but it's like just hanging their hat only on that thing, or X person made it, Y person planted it, therefore it is good, or therefore it deserves to be X amount of dollars per bottle for our first or second vintage, or those things in combination, which probably very helpful for online publication, for or print publication, and people that follow those channels. But that doesn't really, you just don't really talk about that very much on premise. So I think kind of getting the fever, and you even see it a little bit in Burgundy too, where because someone worked somewhere else, therefore the wine is good, or therefore the wine can be X amount of dollars. And you kind of see, and economically speaking, it's going to get more expensive anyway. But it's just absurd how some places have gotten to where now Saint-Aubin and Saint-Romain is $70 wholesale now to start, and it just puts it so far out of reach of most guests, but then leaves this door wide open for domestic Pinot and Chardonnay, or Southern Hemisphere, which is the way of the world. But is the flip side is kind of cool for those regions to you have this like golden opportunity now to capitalize on some of the blue chip regions that are just taking off on a rocket ship. So what disconnect I do see, and it kind of a continuation of coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, is that where sort of putting all the eggs in the basket of someone else said it's this good, or so and so made it, so and so planted it. I think yeah, disconnects beyond that.
That's great. You don't have to think of loads if there's not. It's good if that there's not a lot of disconnects coming to mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of distributors and suppliers have my contacts, so that's kind of they're doing their job. They're supposed to, of course, they want to reach out and schedule tastings. I think like individual producers and such, reaching out, it's hard to, because there's hundreds and thousands of producers, so to take, I don't think anyone's taken it personal, but I think the disconnect of maybe just finding the right sort of to work a market.
Yeah, definitely.
If you already have a distributor in the market, trying to kind of funnel it through them, or like I don't know. I don't know. That's necessarily a disconnect. That's just what I've encountered in my time in the job. And if I were in their seat, like, man, how would I approach this? Because it's hard.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that Union Square Hospitality Group is big fish. We have several restaurants, so I don't. The answer is no if you don't ask. So there's
Right.
also it's kind of catch-22. So
All right. The last question I have for you is looking ahead, what do you think the best restaurant wine programs will look like in the next 3 to 5 years?
well, I'll start with what I think wine programs will look like, and then what the maybe follow up with the best ones. I think what we're in danger of seeing if things continue the way they do is more standardization, if you will, through corporate ownership. And I say that full well. We are corporate. But when you start to think about a global or national level partnerships with chains that are coming in and the selections are all the same and there's nothing unique, it's all very boring. But those are the types of companies that can absorb and be out in front of, say, rising real estate costs, rising labor costs, rising everything, right? Whereas it's much harder for independent restaurants to do that. So, by nature of if we have more of those restaurants with more standardized lists, then the majority restaurants becoming more and more the same in terms of their beverage selection. But then on the flip side, I think will also how you sort of stay afloat and keep people coming back to the restaurant. Hopefully, seeing more restaurants that are like the Pennies, the Claudes of the world, like here in New York, and so many more. I know there's so many places I have yet to see, and hopefully, I like to say like our own, where care deeply about what's on the list. We really work hard to cast a wide net and maybe fish a little bit where others aren't fishing, so to speak, and find these unique portfolios that are one of one and also aren't massive and standardized in their own right, and to then thoughtfully place those on the list and price them really well so that we're just getting more tables, more guests have wine and beverage on the table, and you kind of win at it through volume and return guests versus trying to make all your money on those one or two allocated bottles that the other side of the K-shaped economy will buy but aren't in your restaurant every day. So it's like, I hope we just continue to build more restaurants that have unique lists, that have a story to tell, and that have a point of view. Aren't trying to be everything to everybody, but are just trying to be themselves. And I think that's what people, both industry as well as just guests in general, appreciate. And I think that's what the best lists will look like in 3 to 5 years. Hopefully, we can get some more support from our folks in Washington and make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
We'll see, but that's what I hope the best ones look like.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of the idea of targeted engagement is actually more valuable, can deliver more value than just broad reach.
We just had a tasting yesterday with iconic importer for almost 5 decades who they have gone back to their roots and only focus on French wine, whereas they had really started to grow into Germany and Italy. And not to say there's not great wine there, but they said, look, this is our lane and we want to do this really, 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 really well and go back to our roots and just focus on that and not like have some of these other things that are just taking attention away or maybe causing the portfolio to lose focus. So it's a good, maybe it's a little bit of a recorrection or calibration for the wine world.
Yeah, coming back to that idea of precision.
Yeah, thousand percent. And to make it, Danny always says, sprezzatura. It's like it's precision, but it's like effortless. So it just looks like it doesn't even require effort. So if there's a way to find that in a beverage program, just in how it reads and what it provides, that would be cool.
I love that.
Working with Thomas Keller, he talked about perfection and pursuing it. It's like you never get there, but it's this journey of like getting to that clarity and focus. That's it's about that. It's not actually reaching.
That's where the mastery is in that pursuit, not the destination.
Yeah, it's way more fun. Journey is.
Okay, Vincent, you have given us so much of your time, so I want to be conscious and not continue to take that from you. But so we wrap up here on our show with a rapid fire quiz where we ask 3 questions to just help the listeners better understand the US market and this episode. So if you can just answer in a couple sentences, please.
I know it's hard for me to do.
No worries. Me too. All right, number 1. What is your number 1 tip for mastering the New York metro market?
Well, speaking as someone who just came here, dive in, embrace the hustle, take advantage of it. There are so many tastings here. This is the epicenter for so many things that just don't even exist on the West Coast. So for whatever your timeline is in New York, just take full advantage of it because the city is unforgiving and it's honest and it's fair. So might as well just go for it.
Great advice. I love that. Unforgiving, honest, but fair. All right. What is something you would have told your younger professional self about working in the U.S. wine industry?
Go work in New York. I would have told myself to start a 401k earlier, save more of your tips for traveling to wine regions versus buying wine bottles. Not all of it, but some of it. I think those are the main ones. Travel and save differently and travel more.
Great advice. Great advice. All right. Number 3, where is your favorite place to drink wine in your hometown?
So, well, I live in Westchester County, my wife and I. So we're outside of the city limits, but a short train ride away. And former wine director from Gramercy Tavern, Randall Restiano, opened a pasta and wine bar the next town over from us. So it's about a 12-minute walk. And it's hands down. There's no contest. That's where we go to drink wine.
Amazing. And what's it called?
La Guitarra.
Amazing. I'm hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah, they're new kids on the block and they're killing it. They've only been open, I think, 5 months now. So
that is awesome. Well, Vincent, I want to thank you again so much for being so generous with your time, your experience, your knowledge. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I think I'm pretty easy to find. My Instagram is Vinny Chases Wine. That's a good start, and then always happy to provide more from there.
All right, easy. Well, thank you again for joining us on Masterclass US Wine Market. I hope I get to eat at one of your restaurants again very soon.
Yes, let us know when you're in New York, and we'd be more than happy to take great care.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Masterclass US Wine Market. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay up to date with the latest industry trends, remember to like, follow, and share our podcast. And if you find value in our conversations, please leave us a review to help others discover the show and grow our community. Stay tuned for new episodes every Monday. Until then, brindiamo il vostro successo!